listening to Mooney's story. The four other evangelical moms standing around the kitchen began to buzz with excitement. All of them similar to go to pretty conservative churches in Dallas. All are longtime Republican voters solely because they oppose abortion rights. Only one broke ranks to vote for Hillary in 2016. But this November, they've all decided to vote for Beto O'Rourke, which could be a big deal. So everyone, that's a piece of good news for Beto here. If you can get this kind of voting bloc, this kind of group of people, which there are a pretty significant share of in Texas, and especially in a very close race like this, this could be a big deal. All right, so in the Senate race, one of the most unexpectedly tight in the nation, any small shift among evangelical voters along a stable base for Republicans could make a significant loss for Cruz, who has made white evangelicals the bulwark of his support. So Trump, they support Trump, they support pretty much Republicans in general, and this is, right now, it's causing them to break support here. They're supporting Beto. So, yeah, Democrats nationwide who have largely written off white evangelical voters send a signal not just for the midterms, but also for the 2020 campaign, that there are female religious voters who are open to some of the party's candidates. The women, who are all in their 30s, described O'Rourke as providing a stark moral contrast to Trump, whose policies and behavior they see fundamentally as anti-Christian, especially separating immigrant children from their parents at the border and banning many Muslim refugees and disrespecting women. So yeah, that's a pretty interesting point, and probably it's something that I've been saying. It's very rare you actually hear an evangelical come in and speak out against Donald Trump and just saying some of the stuff. But I mean, I guess you finally have at least some evangelicals who are going to be actually honest with themselves about the way things are actually run here, and the way Trump actually conducts himself, and actually criticize him for that, which is pretty incredible. I care as much about babies on the border as I do about babies in the womb. Tessa Clark, one of Mooney's friends, said, confessing she was mortified about how she used to vote because she'd only now considered abortion policy. She only considered abortion policy. We'd been asleep. Now we've woken up. That's a pretty big quote there. Clark sells candles poured by refugee women in Dallas. She began to weep as she recalled visiting a migrant woman detained and separated from her daughter at the border. When an older white evangelical recently said she couldn't be a Christian and vote for O'Rourke, Clark was outraged. I keep going back to who Jesus was when he walked on earth, and this is about proximity to people in pain. And it's exactly what I've been trying to say. It's like these policies are not Christian stuff. And she makes a good point there. There is a way, a very easy way to be liberal and to be Christian. It's very possible. So yeah, here's the thing though. It's far from clear how much influence voters like Clark and her friends will have in the Senate race. So we don't know yet. And there probably are evangelical women who are there's no way. You gotta vote for Ted Cruz. Abortion rights. We're kind of still on the same thing that Clark and Mooney were on a few years ago. So here's the thing. 1 in 3 Texans are evangelical, according to the Pew Research Center. And 85% of white evangelical voters in Texas supported Trump in 2016, higher than the national average, which was a record for a presidential election. Republican strategists dismissed the notion that their Texas base shows any signs of cracking. It's not worrisome at all, saying Chris Wilson, the strategist for Ted Cruz. That would be an anomaly, saying that O'Rourke is behind Ted Cruz, 87% to 11% among evangelical activist voters. So, yeah. The New York Times Upshot section has been polling the race, and most public opinion polls, including that one, I believe, shows that Cruz has a small lead, which pretty much means a tie at this point. It could go either way. And there are, let's keep in mind here, there are 33 days until Election Day. There are definitely a lot of things that could happen. But still, Mooney and her, and by the way, both ways, not just for Cruz or not just for O'Rourke. So still, Mooney and her friends may represent a rather under-the-radar web of white evangelical women that, in the same way that people didn't really count in the white working class voters on the Democratic side, they may be, there is a chance the Republicans may be forgetting about these people. So they may be angry with Trump's policies or frustrated because they feel the faith has been weaponized to support their agenda, which, I mean, come on. Like, way to wake up here. And if Christian voters wake up to the way their faith has been weaponized here, just to support their policies, and it's just gotten so much out of hand, it is very unlikely the Republicans will ever have power. But like that's very unlikely. That's every Christian after years of voting for Republicans is going to say, you know what, we're going to turn the tide. So yeah, how does that vote represent the little girl I used to be? Sarah Darnoff said, the Republicans used to be the party of family and morals and values, and now they're not. Yeah, so Sarah Darnoff, she was the person who said that. She's a court-appointed special advocate for children. She voted a straight Republican ticket after Kermit Gosnell, a Pennsylvania physician, was indicted in 2011 for murdering babies born alive in botched abortions. But she was moved watching O'Rourke sit with migrant children separated from their families and reflected on her own vulnerability growing up with a single mother who was blind. So yeah, there's all of this kind of thing that they are considering at this point. So Kelsey Hensey, who graduated from the conservative Dallas Theological Seminary, talked about how she adopted a black infant as Trump swept the Republican primaries to realize how much she needed to learn about race. It brought the torrent of everything else. She said, when I look at Cruz, I think he sees Republican politics. When I look at Beto, I think he sees vulnerable people who need to be supported. The women were especially frustrated with the pastors in their own backyard, like Robert Jeffress, who's a nearby First Baptist, leads the nearby First Baptist Dallas, and is one of Trump's most vocal supporters. He said you were doing so much damage. That's what she said to Jeffress. Who, by the way, if you've seen him, probably goes on cable news a lot. You can watch some of his appearances there if you're more interested in trying to figure out what he said. So he's a pastor, so I should identify with what he says. Bailey said, this is how I grew up. But for me, it was finally knowing that it was okay to push back. Sometimes their support feels hush-hush. A few of their friends who support O'Rourke are married to men who support Cruz and have refused to let them speak publicly, which is a little strange. One friend, she would want to protect her marriage, but she worried she'd be crucified if people find out, Clark said, which is a little bit disturbing. And let's be honest, it's probably not a healthy marriage if your husband doesn't let you speak publicly about your personal support. And seems like that husband of yours does not respect your opinion on political politics, if they won't let you speak out on it, which is a little disgusting. All right, so speaking of disgusting, Larry Summers, he's a former president of Harvard and chief economist of the World Bank and Obama administration Treasury Secretary. He decided to drive through the sticks. What? Yeah, so he says, economists like me see the world through a prism of models, but there are other ways of gaining understanding about economy and its workers. And this should be, by the way, super interesting. So this was brought home to me last month when I accompanied my wife on a trip different than any of other I'd ever taken. So he said we drove for 2 weeks on 2-lane roads from Chicago to Portland across the Great Plains and the Rocky Mountains. The larger cities we passed through included Dubuque, Iowa, Cody, Wyoming, and Bozeman, Montana. And of course, driving across America as opposed to looking down from a plane, this makes clear how much of this vast country is uninhabited. Larry Summers is born here. This is an incredible part. He was born in America. He's been a big figure there and has lived here for 63 years. Never has he ever even probably thought about Cody, Wyoming, or Bozeman, Montana, which is pretty incredible, in my opinion. Just to say the least, about it just tells you pretty much everything you need to know here about Larry Summers. Again, we encountered signs warning us to check our gas because we'd be 50 miles to the next gas station. I'm sure there were moments where we were 250 miles away from any place where I could have bought an iPhone charger. Often there was no mobile service either, like we were on Mars. Which is he's but the thing is, like, you make this makes sense coming from like Molly Hemingway or something like that, or some like crazy journalist. But the point is, he is the leader, he was the leader of what's considered the best institution of higher learning in this country, and he was a Treasury Secretary. The fact that he talks like it's a little weird. I'm just saying the least. The conversation we overheard hewed close to local matters. I've always been taking it for granted that brought in the opportunities for young people, or that brought in opportunities for young people, a good thing, and the disadvantaged parents would be among the greatest champions of that idea. Now I see more nuance, top advisors, multiple presidents, architecture of global financial deregulation. Larry Summers, seeing the product of his work in real time here. That's pretty much the reality of what's going on. He's seeing the product of his work in real time. The phrase "the way life is," I've come to think is an idea that those concerned with the political economy could usefully ponder. It's fashionable to talk about business leaders, cosmopolitan elites, who are more worried about the concerns of their conference mates in Davos than their fellow citizens in Detroit or Dusseldorf, Germany. So weird. They are blamed for provoking a backlash against globalization. What I saw on my trip was how profoundly different ways of life are within the U.S. I began to understand, but then I had those who live as their parents did on smaller communities closer to the land. It's a little, like, what? What? This is, I don't even know what to do with this. This is like, this is confusing me. Yeah, it's like he's an alien in his own country, which is so, it's disturbing that he hasn't experienced that at all. He's just getting around to this, like, for the first time, which is very funny. It's like he's definitely a top hat and monocle type of guy here. He says the U.S. is a remarkable place because it's an amalgam of, I'm pretty sure I said that wrong, of remarkable places. Americans want to live in very different ways. Perhaps more appreciation of that on that part will lead to our society, could strengthen, on the part of those who could lead our society, could strengthen or unify our country. It is surely a complex and difficult moment in history. Okay, so yeah, Larry Summers, the Burger King is not in fact an official monarch. Please make a note of it. It's a little joke there from Splinter, who pretty much wrote this book up, this piece up. That would be pretty interesting to read to you all today, because the fact that, like, someone can actually, like, think like that, it's like, they were different from us. It was not like anything I'd ever seen before. It was shocking. I'm blown away. Like, that's, like, pretty incredible. You could think like that. It's like, what? Who are you? What are you doing? I don't get it. I'm so confused. I'm like, what's going on? Anyway, yeah, that is it for us today. And all right, it's time for the first time this week to because we actually have time for a plug section. Thanks so much for listening to us today, ladies and gentlemen. Global is out now. I highly encourage you, check it out. Give it a listen. It's very important. We're going to have another episode coming up in a few months, so you just got to really want to drink this one in. Check it out if you haven't already. Get it up. It's coming very successful. Appreciate you giving it all the support, and that we couldn't have done that, obviously, without you guys. Very important stuff there. Also, midterm elections coming up. We're adding new guests to our lineup every day. It's going to be huge. We got shows at 9 a.m., 12 p.m., 2 p.m., and, of course, the final 8 p.m. show that will carry us in the night when the polls close and the results come in. We'll find out what is the future. And this is, everyone's saying, this is the most important election of our lifetime. So you're going to want to, it's your responsibility to tune in today to Newsflash and give it a listen. Go out there and vote. Very, very important. All of it. It's going to be a great show. But I appreciate, spend November 6th with us, won't you? Spreaker.com/CSWS. Stay tuned, Newsflash. We got a full show. We're going to give you more details, but it's an incredible day. So feel free to check it out. So Newsflash, have a great rest of your Wednesday.